the resource persons are here. Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You are welcome to the second edition of Reignite Public Affairs National Dialogue Series, which is a knowledge-driven dialogue, a knowledge-driven policy analysis forum. And our passion for this webinar series is based on the need to shape the immediate and long-term future of this country. The focus areas we've listed include the health sector, education, economy, agriculture, governance, infrastructure, and security sectors. We are in partnership, we host this event in partnership with Business Day, the leading media group in Nigeria, business media group in Nigeria. As Nigeria marches towards our 60th independence anniversary in the next 3 months, there is a critical need to review her progress in key sectors that have the extreme potential to catalyze national development. This becomes even more stringent in this era of COVID-19 pandemic. Reignite Public Affairs, the conveners of this webinar, is Nigeria's first full-service public affairs consulting firm based in Abuja with an office in Lagos. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Franklin Ginger Eke, the Executive Director and Chief Operating Officer of Reignite Public Affairs. I'll move quickly to welcome the Group Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of CNC Connect, Perception Managers, of which Reignite Public Affairs is a subsidiary. Is no other person than Yomi Badejo Okusanya, a consummate public relations practitioner with an established reputation as a communication strategist, stakeholder management expert with extensive experience in government and legislative relations, as well as crisis communication. Yomi Badejo is a fellow of the Nigeria Institute of Public Relations, past chairman NIPR Lagos chapter, and currently the president of African Public Relations Association, APRA. Join me to welcome the man we love to call YBO. YBO, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Franklin. On behalf of CMC Connect, Perception Managers, the parent company for Reignite Public Affairs, I'd like to welcome everyone on this platform to discuss this vital topic on the economy of Nigeria. Digital economy is very critical, and I'm happy that it's one of the areas that we have focused on in our 7-part series. As Franklin earlier said, we are looking at other aspects of the economy. We had education a few weeks back, and I'm sure that before the end of this program, we will also announce to you the next time we are convening. I want to thank you for joining us. I want to congratulate Franklin and his team for putting this together, especially at this time. Most people have asked that we keep on talking and talking. That's why we named this the dialogue series. If we're not talking, then we're warring. But we're not just talking alone. We're talking policy. We're hoping that the outcome of this kind of forum will help to shape the policy and how we move together and move forward as a country. I want to thank the eminent panelists that have been gathered to discuss this, starting from the Honorable Minister of Communication and Digital Economy. I know for accepting to be our keynote speaker this afternoon. I also know that the other panelists are eminently qualified to be here. I do know a few of them personally. Chineye is our go-to person when it comes to issues of technology. And of course, Obi Asika, who sits in the intersection between entertainment, creative sector, and of course, digital. And I know, even though I did not have met other panelists, I know that they're eminently qualified of their background, and I'm so happy that they could take time to join us this afternoon. So nothing else for me to say, but to again welcome you. Thank you for coming, and I wish us very fruitful deliberations.
Thank you, Yomi. At this point, we would like to play a very short video clip. A very short video clip on the state of the economy. Please, can we have the video clip? Just very short, and then we'll bring in our moderator, Chinenye Bazugu.
From Nigeria's independence in 1960 till date, the economy has been evolving constantly. In the 1960s, the agriculture-led economy generated 57% of the GDP and accounted for 64.5% of export earnings. The 70s witnessed the era of the oil boom and supported an economy growing at 8% per annum. The 80s sustained the oil boom and the consequent manufacturing industry, making Nigeria the largest African economy, with oil serving as 95% of foreign exchange earnings and 65% budget revenue. Privatization of state-run enterprises heralded the 90s, with the government handing over communication, power and transportation to improve service delivery to the public. In the 2000s, the economy became the biggest in Africa after a rebasing of its growth trajectory. In 2019, the economy began to recover from the 2016 recession, but per capita income was still failing because the population was growing faster than the economy. Nigeria's GDP only recorded a consistent growth rate between 1969 to 1974 and 1996 to 2015. However, in the first quarter of 2020, Nigeria GDP growth of 1.87%, which represents the lowest growth rate since the third quarter of 2018. Pre-COVID projections showed that the economies of emerging and developing countries were expected to grow from 4.1 to 4.6% between 2019 and 2020. In reality, 2020 first quarter GDP data from the National Bureau of Statistics shows a very high concentration of economic activities in a few sectors. 5 sectors: agriculture, crude oil, manufacturing, trade and telecommunications accounted for 72% of GDP, with non-oil sectors accounting for 90.5% of the GDP and oil sector accounting for 9.5%. The economies of emerging and developing countries in which Nigeria is classified is expected to have the least contraction of 1% in the post-COVID era, with the IMF projecting that global GDP will improve in 2021. Post-COVID economic realities negatively affecting oil prices, resulting in revenue losses and exchange rate pressure. Inflation is also on the rise. In response, the National Assembly approved a revised 2020 budget of 10.6 trillion naira, adopting a crude oil benchmark of $28 per barrel and an exchange rate of 360 naira per US dollar. Nigeria also incurred 1.2 trillion naira debt in the first quarter alone. Another COVID effect is the contraction of 8 out of the 19 major sectors in Nigeria, with transportation losing the most, while finance and insurance emerged as the sectors with the highest growth. Globally, top performers in the COVID-19 economy are e-commerce, logistics and courier services, health tech, virtual meetings and e-entertainment with brands like Zoom, Netflix, Amazon and Helium Health, enjoying an increase in traffic and revenue. A decline in business came for the airline, hospitality, energy, and live entertainment industries. The current global realities of COVID-19 and the oil price slump is compelling countries to find new routes of growing their economies. Nigeria is not left out, With plans to reposition the economy through a digital economy strategy, public and private sectors need to consolidate plans to move Nigeria into a 21st century knowledge economy. How can this plan become a reality? Join Reignite Public Affairs and Business Day in the second edition of Reignite Public Affairs National Dialogue Series, where distinguished panelists will be discussing Nigeria at 60, rebooting Nigeria's economy, the way forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much. While we wait for the minister to join us, I'd like Chinenye, our moderator, to introduce members of our panel. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Reignite series on rebooting the digital economy. It's going to be a really interesting and robust session, given the kind of people that we've brought to the table, and we thank you for the opportunity to be part of this dialogue. Let me begin by introducing the panelists, and then we can go into the topic for the day. I would like to start with Adia So, who is very well known in the technology ecosystem space, and perhaps one of the leading lights in that area. Adia builds and operates ventures. She has successfully designed and built and scaled tech-driven technology platforms, companies in emerging markets, for companies in excess of $100 million. She was a vice president of growth and managing director of Nigeria for Migo, a machine learning powered digital instant credit platform. Prior to that, she was a director of digital business at Nine Mobile, formerly Etisalat Nigeria, where she was responsible for partnering with startups to deliver mobile content, advertising, financial, and API services. Adia, welcome to the discussion.
Thanks for having me.
Next up is a barrister, is a lawyer. You're welcome. Right. Next up is a principal partner in Prism Partners and Solicitors, an energy and extractive industries legal and regulatory advisor. Mr. Najim Animashaun has worked extensively in the policy area. He's super strong in compliance, strong procurement, strong in procurement integrity and institutional reform experience. He has over 30 years working in public and private sector as an external and in-house consultant. In the course of doing so, he has advised on and managed many multinational cross-disciplinary teams in complex and institutional reform projects from Afghanistan to Nigeria to London. He's a Prince 2 certified and has a powerful pedigree in public-private partnership. Welcome, Najim. Okay. Then we have from the creative sector, we've got someone who is a founder of Dragon Africa, and also co-founder and chairman of Social Media Week Lagos, which is the largest new media and technology conference in Africa. Mr. Obi Asika is the national coordinator of the technical working group for the creative industries, tourism, culture, and hospitality sectors for the Nigerian Economic Plan 2020 to 2050, known as Agenda 2050. He's very modest in the way he puts himself forward, and he has a very short profile, but a super long resume that's very well known to all in the creative industry. Please help me welcome Obi Asika.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay. I don't think it is in my perhaps I may not be able to take on the resume of our keynote speaker, the Honorable Minister. It is a very consummate and extensive one. Perhaps we can wait for him to come on and introduce him when we get to the point of the keynote address. But Dr. Isa Pantami is very well known to most of us in the technology sector as someone who has taken, beginning with NIDDA, the Nigerian IT Development Agency. He started there and was able to turn that agency around and to reorient its policies towards more about creating the framework for IT and IT development in Nigeria. He then moved on to become the Honorable Minister for Communications, later renamed the Minister for Communications and a Digital Economy. which is most appropriate. And that brings us to the discussion that we have today. I think the keynote address may have to come a little bit later, and in which case it may not be the keynote, because we have information coming in that he is running late due to other commitments, federal government commitments. So with the permission of everyone, I think we can go ahead and start the panel. And when the minister does come in, then we can take his comments. So just to set the framework for the discussions, we will pass through, we'll take initial comments from all the panelists, and then we'll go into deep discussion around the views that they've expressed. And we will then proceed into hoping that hopefully get to the point where we can actually outline specific solutions that would result in the resetting and the rebooting of the economy. I think we should start from the perspective of what exactly do we mean by this digital economy. And in some ways, this is something that is one of those terms that people refer to, and I'm not sure that we've taken enough time to try to unpack those things. So if you can have the slides up on the screen, we will quickly go through a few core definitions and then proceed with the discussion. Not this one.
Okay, Chinaya, thank you very much. I think we understand that the minister is unable to join us, and he has sent a representative in the person of Dr. Femi Adeluyi. Femi has acknowledged, has waved at us. Femi Adeluyi is the technical assistant, information technology to the Honorable Minister of Communications and Digital Economy. He holds a PhD in computer engineering from Chosun University in South Korea. And he plays a strategic role in the implementation of several programs in the ICT sector, including leading the minister's team that drafted the National Digital Economy Policy and Strategy. He's also the coordinator of the Presidential Committee on drafting the National Broadband Policy 2020 to 2025, as well as the ECOWAS focal person for the study on the development of a new legislative and regulatory framework for the digital economy sector in West Africa. Please join me to welcome Dr. Femi Adeluyi.
I'm glad
Dr. Femi, you can unmute. Okay, great.
Can I go ahead?
Yes, please, you're welcome to
right.
Reignite Public Affairs National Dialogue Series as a representative of the Honorable Minister, Dr. Issa Pantami, Minister for Communications and Digital Economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ginger. Thank you, Chinaya and everyone that's here. I'm glad to be here. I bring you warm greetings from my boss and mentor, the Honorable Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, Dr. Issa Ali Ibrahim Pantami. He would have loved to be here in person, but there's another meeting that was pre-scheduled at the exact same time. So he sends his warm greetings, and he'll be following up with what we discuss here. I'll just go ahead now to make his presentation. May peace, mercy, and blessings be upon you all. It gives me great pleasure to attend this very important event that's organized by Reignite Public Affairs on national, and it's a national dialogue series on how we can reboot the Nigerian economy in the wake of COVID, even especially as we prepare for the 60th anniversary of the country. Now, the National Digital Economy Policy and Strategy was already put together as if we knew that COVID was going to come to cause some problems. So I'm going to talk about that, as well as what we're doing through that policy to try to reboot the Nigerian economy. On the 17th of October 2019, His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari redesignated the ministry from it being the Ministry of Communications to it becoming the Ministry of Communications and Digital Economy. And on the 23rd of the same month, it was presented and endorsed at the Federal Executive Council meeting. And the next day, the very next day, the 24th of October, the mandate of implementing the digital economy policy and strategy began. The National Digital Economy Policy and Strategy was put together by the Federal Ministry of Communications and Digital Economy, and it was launched by His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari on 28th of November 2019. And that policy addresses a whole lot of the aspects that we have to deal with as a nation, different sectors. And it was listed out in 8 different pillars. The first pillar is the developmental regulation pillar. You know, most times when people hear about regulation, one feels that regulation is something that stifles. So the choice of the term developmental regulation is to emphasize that this regulation that is being promoted through the policy is not to stifle, rather is to develop the economy. The second pillar is the digital literacy and skills pillar. We believe that it's important that you have a critical mass of digitally literate and digitally skilled Nigerians if you want to take advantage of digital technologies to build the economy. Pillar number 3 is the solid infrastructure pillar, and that deals with things that have to do with broadband penetration, things that have to do with data centers. Pillar number 4 is the service infrastructure pillar, and that talks about the platforms that will be used in digital economy to deliver the services. After the platform has been built, you have pillar number 5, which is the digital services development and promotion pillar. So when we have the platform, we display and we release the services on the platform. Pillar number 6 talks about soft infrastructure, and that handles things like privacy and cybersecurity. Pillar number 7 talks about digital society and emerging technologies. It's important that technology is not used for the sake of technology alone, but technology must be tied to an index or to indices that measure the livelihood and the well-being of people. And that's what we're trying to achieve there. In addition to doing that, we want to try to ensure that Nigerians are innovative and take advantage of emerging technologies. And the last but not the least is the indigenous content development and adoption pillar. You know, we did not use the term local content because we realize that many Nigerians feel that things that are local in quotes are not as good as things that are foreign. So we decided to use the term indigenous content, but we're trying to emphasize that we can have content that's developed from Nigeria, which is not just good for Nigerians alone, but also good for us to be able to export. Now, as it was displayed in the video little clip that we just watched, Nigeria depends a whole lot, unfortunately, on the oil sector to sustain the economy. And there's a strong drive by the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari to diversify the economy. And that is what the digital economy policy and strategy is trying to achieve. I mean, when one looked at the title that you choose for this discourse, it was very interesting. It talked about rebooting. You know, incidentally, when you think about rebooting, the first thing you think about is things that have to do with computing. So it's obvious that for us to be able to jumpstart the economy again, the digital sector, the digital economy will play a very important role. Now, when you're talking about rebooting, you talk about either the hard reboot or the soft reboot. The hard reboot where you have to actually power off the entire system before you put it back on. While the soft reboot, you just use a set of keys to jumpstart a system that has been bogged down. We didn't totally stop the economy, we slowed things down. So we'll be looking at it in terms of a soft reboot. And when we want to have a soft reboot, what do you press? We press Control, Alt, and Delete. And so that's the analogy that's going to be used to discuss how we're using the policy to reboot the economy. The first one is control. For us to jumpstart an economy, it's important to have a feedback and control mechanism where you try to analyze what has happened in the economy to see how you can refine. One of the things that the COVID pandemic and the whole issues relating to it, especially the lockdown, did for Nigeria and many other countries, that it allowed us to sit down and to rethink our processes. So in terms of the control, it maps to the pillar number 1 that talks about developmental regulation. We're looking now more than before how we can see processes and try to fine tune and improve them. It also talks about the pillar that has to do with the soft infrastructure. Now there's a new normal. I mean, when you are going out, you are not focusing just on what you are going to wear. You're going to think of wearing a mask. You're going to think of also having a sanitizer. It's a new normal. So digital also has almost become a new normal because of what has happened as a result of COVID. But we understand that it is important and critical for people to feel safe online. If not, they're not likely to embrace your digital transformation. So as part of our efforts in implementing the pillar number 6, which is the soft infrastructure pillar, we're working with the Office of the National Security Advisor and other institutions, relevant institutions, to ensure that Nigerians can feel safe online, to ensure that people know that their data is not compromised, that their data can remain private. And that's why the National Information Technology Development Agency also released the NDPR to help to protect people's data online. And in addition to that, we realized that as a result of trying to address the pandemic, the issues relating to the pandemic, public personal data may have to be used. So another set of guidelines were released that talks about how personal data should be used by public institutions to still guarantee the safety of people. In addition to these 2 pillars, and talking about the control aspect of the rebooting, we also have the pillar number 8 that talks about the indigenous content development and adoption. Right now, a lot of things are going on that we're preparing the ministry to ensure that we can strengthen our capacity, the capacity of our indigenous content to sustainably develop the sector. For example, we have a policy that is being prepared for the development of indigenous content in the telecom sector. I'm sure we know that there's something like that in NIDA that deals with IT, but right now we're also looking at something that has to do particularly with the telecom sector. For example, a report we received by the Association for Telecom Companies of Nigeria, ATCON, said that $2.157 billion is expended annually by the telecom sector. A large chunk of this, we know, is sourced from abroad. So we're using our foreign exchange to try to sustain the sector. So what this policy is going to try to achieve is to make sure that we can have a situation where our indigenous solution providers can have a larger slice of this pie, that our indigenous content can be skilled enough to develop the sector in a sustainable way. So moving over from control now of the rebooting process to ALTS. ALTS, we can see it talks about how we can embrace an alternative lifestyle. Like I said before, I mean, things have really changed. For example, a meeting like this will have been held in some fancy hotel or some fancy conference room somewhere. But because of what has happened, most meetings have been moved to online platforms. This morning, there was a meeting that was held with the World Bank and the different MDAs talking about their plan for the year. And it was also held on virtual platforms. So it has come to stay, it's a new normal. So in order to prepare people to address this, the pillars, for example, pillar number 2 addresses the issue of digital literacy and skills. We're ensuring that Nigerians have the required skill set to be able to perform all the tasks required in the digital economy. When this lockdown started, we created some platforms to allow Nigerians to be able to get digital skills online. As we speak, in less than 2-3 months, we have over 36,000 people that have registered on these platforms to learn about different digital techniques, to learn about emerging technology, because we want to build and prepare them to handle the workforce, to be part of the workforce of the future. Pillar number 3, the National Broadband Plan was recently launched by Mr. President on the 19th of March, 2020. And it talks about how we can make sure that there's broadband penetration, that we deepen broadband penetration across the whole country, because if there's no broadband access, it's difficult for people to plug into the digital economy. And right now, as we speak, about 40.18% of broadband penetration is what we have. We had something much less, 30, just a little over 30, when this administration started the second term. Right now, it's about 40.18. So the idea is to try to make sure that broadband is available to all Nigerians, regardless of where they're located, so that people can even work remotely with jobs both in Nigeria and outside the shores of the country. Then we have the digital services development and promotion. We want to encourage our startups to come up with innovative solutions that can help to jumpstart the economy, that can help to encourage different sectors of the economy that are not traditionally digital sectors to embrace the digital economy. For example, we have a program that is targeted at the agricultural sector. It's called the Adopted Village Program. We have it, we get farmers, we help them to use digital skills so that they can improve their yield, so that they can reach their customers directly. So those are things that we're doing to make this alternative lifestyle become the new normal. We have the pillar number 7 that talks about digital society and emerging technology. We're promoting how people can use emerging technologies, blockchain technology, artificial intelligence, big data analytics, to try to create innovative solutions that can jumpstart the economy. And of course, when we talk about the aspect that relates with delete, we ensure that we can reduce waste. There's no point filling a bucket with water when the bucket is leaking. So we look at how we can recycle things. We look at how we can promote the use of digital platforms. We look at how government can take advantage of digital technology to improve their performance, to make them more efficient. NIDA right now has something called an IT project clearance committee. The whole idea is that we look at the broad spectrum of IT solutions and ensure that they're compatible with each other. We ensure that we reduce waste. So those are things that we're trying to do in terms of delete, as it were, when it comes to control or delete of rebooting the economy. We also try to interface with the private sector, the different trade organizations, like we're doing. That's why the minister was interested in participating in an event like this, because we get feedback and we use it to refine the system. So in a nutshell, that's what the ministry is doing to implement the digital economy. And in that process, we're rebooting the economy using the control or delete approach. Thank you very much for your kind attention. We're glad to take questions after this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister for Communications and Digital Economy, represented here by Dr. Femi Adeluyi. Thank you very much for that keynote presentation from the Office of the Minister. Chineye, I hand over the proceedings back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Dr. Adeluyi, or I should say thank you, Honorable Minister, represented by Dr. Adeluyi. Very succinct. I know that the broadband plan is a very extensive document, and we will take the opportunity today to kind of like unpack those things and try to understand get a better understanding of what needs to be done, what can be added to it, or ways in which we can expand the impact and accelerate the pace at which it will go. Just to reframe this a little bit. I don't know if the slides can come up very quickly, so we can just graphically express what it is that we're referencing. If you could just scroll, yes. So could you go forward to to the next slide, please? The one after this, yes. After, forward, go forward. One more. Right, so just to help so the audiences, go back one slide, just so that the audiences were all carried along. You know, this was the situation in the year 2001. You can see the little line that runs around Africa and goes on to Asia represents, you know, what used to be called OSAT-3, which delivered the entirety of our connectivity. And infrastructure is always a good way to kind of like visualize what it is that you're doing in any society and anything that has to do with the digital economy. So this was a situation in Africa and in Nigeria for a pretty long time. And as a result, the bubbles that you can see on the right-hand side determine those who sit inside that cloud economy, what we now call the digital economy. And the various segments that are inside there represent those who were connected. And the connected people were obviously those who were largely in the formal sector and in urban areas. The rest of the country was literally not connected to this. For most people who were able to, at this time, whenever you watched any of the Africa Cup of Nations football matches, or you made an international call through Nitels, gateways, this was really all that you had. And this was the situation up until 2010 or 2012, when we started the revolution in terms of the infrastructure, which you see on the next slide. By the next slide and through to 2019, you suddenly see this explosion of broadband along the broadband cables, coming along the submarine cables, coming along the coast of Africa and pumping into Nigeria. So within a very short period of time, there was an explosion of connectivity, but it was only happening at the coast, which is where the pipes were coming in. As a consequence, when we started to see people moving into this cloud economy, the initial expansion, of course, went to larger urban areas. We started seeing people in most of the state capitals having access to connectivity. And by extension, when you see the infrastructure, it tends to change the way that people actually operate. And this is the beginnings and the seedings of the digital economy. So when we refer to the economy, digital economy, we're talking not just about the infrastructure that's in place, but also the services that are built around it and the values and how the society itself changes. And so with this in mind, you know, you kind of like want to understand, where do we need to go to from here? I believe the next slide shows what happens, what the federal government is saying now about the expansion. So here you can see how the economy is now expanding. And the areas that are in white are the areas that are presumed to have a higher level of infrastructure. And the areas that are in the darker colors are those that do not necessarily have this infrastructure. What this doesn't tell us is the quality of the service and the fundamental changes in terms of the way that people actually are using this technology to change their lives. Ultimately, our society and the digital economy itself will be defined by certain things. And those things are kind of like captured by 4 or 5 elements that we want to talk about today and speak about it from the various sectors. And the panelists will be invited to explore this a little bit further. If you can go one slide next. We will eventually find that ultimately we define our society by the quality of life that it brings to people and the capacity of individuals to be able to self-actualize. And that is driven by a number of elements, which we will have an opportunity today to speak into. So let me start by inviting each of the panelists to give us a broad view of where they're coming from, how they see the digital economy, and then we go on into the discussions. And please remember, there's a Q&A section throughout the presentations. You can start to post your Q&A in there. The panelists will respond there, as well as in the main slide. So let me begin with Adia. Over to you. What do you think this digital economy is all about? And where is it that, or what do you know, I should say, not think, because you've been in this space, perhaps done much more than many other people. Please feel free and give us your overview.
Thank you, Chineye. So by virtue of my experience, Much of what I will say will speak to the drivers of the digital economy, as well as the users of the digital economy, right? So this takes a step forward beyond the conversations that are probably going to come up today about the presence of infrastructure. And you've already alluded to that by talking about SAT3, but I want to just take the conversation forward a little bit and bring it closer to home. So I'm going to first start talking about the pain points on both sides, from the drivers and the users of the digital economy, and then I'll sort of speak to what I think we could explore in terms of solutions, right? So I think, unfortunately, Nigeria is notorious for being a tough place to do business, right? And that is, the opposite philosophically of what technology is supposed to help you achieve, all right? So there's so much friction in setting up and running a technology-driven business successfully, right? And these challenges are multifaceted, right? So for instance, so I've spent some of my career in the telecom sector, I've spent some of my career in the banking sector, right? Now, speaking about the telecom sector, for instance, right? So telcos are the proxy for the internet. Since we lack deep last mile fiber, right? The only way to extend the internet to the wider population is over mobile. But people often only talk about how much the telcos supposedly make. Nobody really talks about how much it costs to build a telco network, right? And I'll make some comparisons with the rest of the world. So for instance, the network to deploy it for a telecom company is the same across the world. It costs the same. They don't, the manufacturers don't ask for less because that network is deployed in Nigeria, right? And these networks are built for customers that spend $50 to $100 a month. However, average revenue per Nigerian user is $5, right? And that $5 is put under continuous pressure with devaluation, right? So that is just one of many examples that I could give to illustrate the challenge of actually trying to maintain a business with rising costs, right? And revenue that is under pressure from devaluation and even regulation that continuously insists on dropping the prices for the sake of the consumers, while at the same time complaining that the network is not of a quality for the sake of the consumers. So I feel that the telecom sector, suffers an especially grave case of that pressure, because I don't see any press releases when POSs are not working in Nigeria, right? But the banks actually in the media publish, bank after bank after bank publish their profitability, their significant profitability. And telcos are unable to do that. I mean, MTN might do that, but I can assure you, from my insider's perspective, the rest of the three are suffering. And none of us here would run a business that's only profitable 3 months of the year. Yeah? So beyond that, I think there are policy challenges as well. So for instance, there are still some very strange offline requirements. There are certain things you can't do in Nigeria without a wet signature on paper, right? Why has this not been digitized? Unfortunately, that has not been possible because identity has not been digitized. But then why has identity not worked? Compared to India that has collected 8 data points per individual and pretty much digitized a significant proportion of their population, Nigeria collects 22 and has created a process that is so full of friction. I'm not really sure that is conducive to scale. And I speak to this from my experience in scaling products. The harder you make a product, the more steps you include in a product, the more friction you apply towards it achieving scale. And you can't do anything of significance in Nigeria if you don't do it at scale, since there are 200 million of us. You can't be creating solutions for 100,000 people or 1 million people. You need to be thinking about how solutions will scale a significant proportion of the population, right? I also want to talk, technology is making people's careers look different. I'm a woman, obviously, so I don't wear a suit and tie to the office. But I don't think I've run a team where I've required any of the gentlemen to wear a tie, right? And with tech companies and the way our hours function, one day you may be talking to Singapore, another day you may be talking to San Francisco. You're required to work round the clock, and physical comfort is required. So tech companies dress down. The whole world knows this. However, young people that are dressed down enter a bus with a laptop and are arrested by SARS because you are carrying a laptop, you must be a 419 now. This is it's a deeply frustrating and backward perspective that we have in this country. But I had my staff arrested on a near daily basis, and I know that I speak for most people in the tech ecosystem. There is such fear of encountering SARS. And then we talk about removing barriers to doing business. I think the government plays a very important role in the digital economy, right? Because I think you learn by doing. We as Africans especially, we learn by doing, because books are not always available. You know, we learn through stories and we learn through action. I'll tell you a story. I'm trying to renew my passport right now, right? In this COVID time. Someone sent me, in order to get this done, a picture of the form, which I had to print out, fill out. The expectation now is that I would take a picture of the form that I filled out, which already has problematic resolution now, because you've taken a picture of a form that was not meant to be digitized. I'm now supposed to fill out this form, take another picture, further worsening the resolution, send that same picture back, and then he'll probably still call me to come and sign, fill out the same form and sign it in person, because that actually was only enough to start the process, but not to complete the process. Today,
Right.
I can create a new website and create a digital form today. This is not a one-year problem. This is not a problem that requires pillars. We can fix this issue today. But yet we are still mired in issues that other countries talked about 25 years ago, unfortunately, right? And we're messing with a $300 billion, economy. That's the size of the digital economy in Africa, right? In 2025. That's just in 5 years. So on top of that, we seem to have this, it's difficult for Nigerian businesses to invest in technology, right? Because we do not have the tax support or the government support to support these companies. So there's a lot of capital that is flowing in from outside. What does that mean? It means foreigners own Nigerian innovation. These companies are not, they don't need to be incorporated in Nigeria. They incorporate in Delaware, they incorporate elsewhere, and so that they can receive the funding. Why can't those companies be incorporated in Nigeria? Why can't they be filing for intellectual property from Nigeria? Because there's no protection, right? So on top of that, I mean, there are even some practical applications for technology. So like the Honorable Minister's representative mentioned, there has been less air traffic since we have all taken to Zoom during COVID. There's also been less road traffic. We don't have enough roads to accommodate the traffic that we have. These are practical benefits in the use of technology, right? That I believe should be espoused by us as a country. And I think that we should also think about how we will educate this country, the population of this country. I think we will probably be top 5 largest countries in the world by population by 2050. Right? Half of this country is under 19. We don't have enough institutions to even give these children secondary school skills, right? There will be war in this country if people do not have a way to live, right? Even COVID, in a matter of days, people who were gainfully employed in the offline sector were on the streets begging, right? But we talk about friction, and then you have a particular parastatal waking up one day and saying they want to regulate social media. Why? You have another parastatal waking up and the logistics industry, which we need right now in COVID, because we can't move around, logistics are critical to delivering even food and much needed goods. An industry has now imposed an additional 2% tax on top of VAT on top of this industry. I don't understand why these things are happening, and I'm open to someone explaining that to me. So for me, unfortunately, there's a lot of friction and not enough enablement in driving the digital economy. And I believe that, the Ministry of the Digital Economy has a role to play in changing the mindset of the nation, of investors, and of other government parastatals. I think that's very important. And to help tell stories of Nigerian innovation. These stories are well hidden now because these startups and tech companies don't want to come out for fear of inviting regulation. And I don't blame them, right? So I think that we should remember that when we're seeing multiple levels of taxation, for instance, I mean, why can't all of these parastatals that want to charge all these companies that are doing well? Can they just come and stop at your ministry first, so that they can explain why there is value being taken from an industry that you're trying to cultivate? Trust me, it would help, right? But having said that, it's important to remember that if care is not taken, if action is not taken, this digital economy will not be owned by Nigerians. Thank you.
There's so much in what you said and so many points that are taken, and I'm sure the audience is following through. I've already seen quite a number of comments coming up in the chat. Please remember to put your questions into the Q&A. Thank you very much, Adia. To follow up with that and give us a perspective from the creative industry perspective is Obi. Obi, you want to go ahead and speak into your perceptions? And I think Adia has set out so many of the elements that I don't know if you need 1 minute or two. Please go ahead, unmute yourself, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I think Adia has, first of all protocols observed. It's a real pleasure to be here today. Adia has kind of just opened up a whole gateway of stuff. I'm just wondering, can I get my presentation? Is that possible? I could just run through a couple of slides very quickly. Yeah, so on the opening slide, just on the opening slide quickly, I think it's important, because I think when we're talking about rebooting, I think the issue is, which is what Adia is really saying, how connected are we in the first place? Yeah, can you go to the next slide? I think we're very much on the low signal side. This is just to talk about the creative industry, just as an overview. The numbers tell us that by 2023, Nigeria will be a $10 billion economy per annum in the creative industries. The UK, the creative industries have led that economy for the last 20 years. And in America, they have led that economy for the last 40 years. Because when you say the creative industries in America, I'm really talking about the IP industries. Next slide, please. Now, these are the things that I think that we need to do. I mean, there's an argument that we're not connected. I think collaboration is actually my key takeaway. And for people to really get to speedy implementation, I mean, when the minister's special technical assistant was speaking about the digital plan and the policy and the broadband plan, which I've read both of those documents, at least I've scanned them. I think they're important documents, but if you go to the next slide, I think let's talk about what's really key for us. I think this is the key to everything, connected thinking. We need collaboration. What Adia is talking about is the frustration that many people in the tech environment feel with the public sector. And I think that there's an opportunity and a moment for people to come together. When you want to pivot, you should be talking to the people who are driving the actual economy. So for me, this pivoting means a number of things. So we have our commercial markets, the market towns, Nnewi, Onitsha, Aba, Computer Village, Lagos, Jos. These places are already generating significant money. If we pump targeted infrastructure into them, we can grow that income exponentially. It's the same thing with the manufacturing hubs. Nigeria is a disconnected country, and we need to connect our country. And in connecting that country, we can do it with the digital infrastructure as well as physical infrastructure. Digital infrastructure can come in right now into hubs, can come into renewable energy into the hubs around the country. The Innovation Support Network has about 75 hubs. We have over 400 universities and polytechnics and technical colleges. There's an enormous need for us to get online immediately with quality and with purpose and to be intentional. If we get to the next slide. For me, these are the keys to the future, right? Everything about Nigeria, whether we look at the digital economy, everything is digital, right? There's no point lying to ourselves. And the key about it is if there's no collaboration in the public sector, we will be very difficult to get it in the private sector. These sectors that I've listed here are absolutely key for the digital economy to thrive. And I was happy the minister's assistant mentioned agriculture as well. I think oil and gas, transport and logistics, everything gets enabled by digital. And then Adia talked about identity, because with the data, you can track everything. And then when we talk about platforms, we're all looking at local ownership. How do we get to local ownership? We're in a country where we're generating billions of views every year, every day. We are not monetizing in our own country. Our talents are constantly on the road outside our country because they cannot monetize at home. So for example, the Nigerian musicians are streaming less in Nigeria than they are in Kenya. Now this is ridiculous if you're actually dealing with reality. And I do not believe that Nigerians have so much less buying power than Kenyans, for example, or Ghanaians. So these are the things that I think we need to drill down into. Can I get to the last slide? This is collaboration is my conclusion, right? And that collaboration is talking about the public and the private. About the public sector, I think all of us grew up in a Nigeria where government was always correct. Government just says this is what it is and that's what it is. But I think what we have seen worldwide is that government doesn't run business. Government doesn't drive innovation. Government does not build that level of capacity. So to build this country, I think we need to have a situation where the public sector, in a very intentional way, backs the private sector. I think Nigeria needs a CITO who's operating directly with the president, coordinating the key sectors that need to be under this digital economy. And I think we need a digital economy council where you get experts from the private sector in the different spaces to work together with the public sector guys who are looking at policy. Because the truth of the matter is, we saw the Nigerian Youth Fund launch this week. It sounds like a great idea. It would sound even better to me if it was partnered with private sector venture funds who are already working in the ecosystem, if it was targeted through direct. So we're not just shooting in the air. Let's be very specific. Let's be very intentional. Let's back Nigeria. I think the key of the whole thing for me is this, that I'm coming from the creative industries, and the creative industries and the IP industries are about the storytellers. We tell the stories. Like Adia was saying, there's a lot of story to tell, but we need the rails and the infrastructure to enable those stories to become capital. And the capital is watching Nigeria. The capital is trying to come into Nigeria. How can we get the right policies, the right partnerships between the public and the private to unlock the value that will drive all of us forward? Because the truth of the matter, let me give you one direct action that this minister and this sector can do today that would actually make everybody happy in the creative industries. There are countless ISPs and DSPs that are illegally streaming and pushing Nigerian content into Nigeria. We have spoken to the Nigerian Copyright Commission. They need support. This ministry can shut down all those things and block its theft. It's daily theft, and millions of Nigerians are being stolen from every single day. We have the power in our hands to block it. We have the power in our hands to monetize our country. That's my focus. I hope I was quick enough.
Thank you very much. The shots fired everywhere.
Adias by timing.
The shots fired everywhere, and a lot of content in there, which we're going to have some time to unpack. Thank you for keeping to our time frames. So let's go to our policy expert who has worked extensively in oil and gas, petroleum, power, and in technology as well. Let me invite Mr. Najim Animashaun to give us his own overview, and then we can dive into the matter. Over to you, Najim. Okay, can we unmute him?
Najim is muted.
Can we unmute him, please?
Plus, can you unmute Najim?
Let's see.
Where is he? Is he there?
Yes, he is on, but for some reason we can't. He's muted, so.
Can he unmute himself?
He is supposed to do that from his end. All right, let's proceed. If we don't have him, we can go into maybe his conversation. His discussions can come up a bit later. So let's dive straight into the issues. I mean, we've listened to the Honourable Minister. We've heard comments made by Adia. We've heard comments made by Obi, and soon enough we'll get inputs from Najim. A few things stand out, and before we actually get to, and this is really about identifying what these core drivers are. We did start by looking at infrastructure, particularly telco infrastructure, but we are being told that maybe we may not have a proper view of what that infrastructure really is, particularly in terms of how you extend it. I think one of the critical points that Adia made, which I found really absolutely fascinating, is that despite the huge numbers that are being posted by the ones, at least the ones that we can see, and the perception of Nigerians that is a fabulous industry to be in, that they're actually struggling. I do know I've heard stories about some of this telco infrastructure being vandalized, either cables being dug up and being cut, sometimes bushfires in some places, and other places, basically simple things like getting diesel to base stations. I think in our pre-discussion as well, you mentioned, yeah, you did mention that a base station is in the region of $350,000. I hope I'm not, by saying so, we're not creating a target for people who want to go and lift those base stations out of where they are. But at that cost, is mobile a viable way for us to carry broadband to the mass of Nigerians? I think that's a critical question. So we understand where our emphasis should be in terms of rebooting. We get this data that says 134 million Nigerians are connected, but they aren't connected through they're connected through mobile, and that's not broadband. So what are your thoughts?
So I think it's the only way. Otherwise, we have to start doing what took the US, I don't know, 40, 50 years and slavery to establish, to get hard lines, right? So the only way is mobile. You're right, the towers are expensive. I think for the purposes of our previous discussion, let me re-benchmark that to about $200,000 per tower. Okay. Right, so it is possible and it is viable, right? But I think.
And how many towers do you think we need to cover Nigeria, just to get a sense of what this kind of infrastructure cost should be
about
at a high level?
Actually, about 10,000 per telco, 10? Right? So.
Wow.
Yeah, so 10,000. So one telco in Nigeria actually has about 10,000, right? And then there is sharing possible to some extent, but there may be, at best, you could share 40% of your network, and then you have to build the rest on your own. Some people can go as far as sharing 70% of your network, right? But then sharing is not, unfortunately, no telco has launched on a fully co-located, fully shared network yet. I think partly because at the time, everybody started building, right? Everybody was building networks based on where they felt they could drive customer acquisition. So all the telcos had different starting points. Well, everybody has kind of ended up with 10,000, chasing that 10,000 number. So unfortunately, I don't think there's really a choice in the matter, right? Because even now when you dig up fiber, you go there after a few years and it may have disappeared. If you can get past the multiple levels of taxation to actually bury the fiber, which has more capacity, but it is what it is. But there are possibilities, there are satellite possibilities.
So let me quickly jump on this so that we can take the conversation forward. So there are two things that come to mind immediately. The first one is right of way. So the Ministry of Communications and Digital Economy, the minister was one who came out very early with these discussions with the telcos and the state governments around how do you drop the prices, and set an even lower benchmark than the previous minister. And then came COVID-19. I'm not sure how many people listened to the minister, but I think everybody listened to COVID-19. So suddenly across the country, we're hearing announcements of state governments reducing right of way to even zero. And that's huge. We also have a state like Lagos, which has announced a fiber plan of shared infrastructure of about 6,000 kilometers, which would literally cover maybe about 60–70% of Lagos. So isn't that a development? So that's the first question around the right of way. The second one is the dreaded 5G. So if we're doing this and we know it's going to be by mobile, then what happens when Nigerians themselves are resisting 5G? Is there any sense in trying to push to build a digital economy when the beneficiaries of that digital economy are against the technology that is being put out there?
At the end of the day, you've got to choose the life you want, right? So let me try and reframe this in a different analogy. Do you want the modernity of city life, or do you want to keep living in a village? That's exactly what's going to happen to us. So if we don't embrace technology and we're happy with village life, then no problem, we'll stay there. You will earn village money, you will eat village food, you will have a village lifestyle, right? But if you want the trappings of modern society, if you want to keep up with the rest of the world and have a globally competitive economy, then you must modernize, right? Because that's what the rest of the world is doing, right? There is being behind.
Okay, so if we assume that that's where we're going, can we even assume that that's where we're going? I don't know, Obi, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, do you, from what you can see, we enjoy a lot of things nationally that sit on digital platforms. Nigeria is #1 in Facebook, #1 in Instagram, #1 in Twitter. I mean, Twitter Nigeria is like a global phenomenon. Doesn't it appear that Nigerians actually do want, the broad generality of Nigerians, especially the youth demographic, really wants to move into the digital economy? And so why would there be the resistance against the culture of 4G or 5G, as the case may be? And how does government and the private sector get together to sort this problem out?
Thanks for the really nice and easy question. I think, the truth of the matter is that Nigeria is in the middle of a fake news crisis and has been for a while. It's not new. COVID has just heightened it. So you have a number of issues in the fault lines. Most Nigerians don't really trust government. And that's just a fact of life. And this has come from decades of lack of delivery and services. So it's not really a political statement, it's just a reality statement. So government has to understand that and has to work out how to build its own credibility. That's why the voice of government is not coming through all the noise as the authentic voice that it should. And therefore we have an issue in that situation, because when you have crises and pandemics, people need to actually listen to authorities, and they really are not. So that issue is the first issue, the credibility of public communication, the way in which it is managed, the way in which it is put through. It also doesn't help that people who are all educated begin to chase those same fake news conspiracies. Because as Adia said, they're doing it on WhatsApp. They're doing it on social media devices. If you're so worried about this stuff, why just drop your phone and go back to the dial-up telephone and try to call somebody, and let's see if that works. I think these things are a situation where the world is moving. I'm very confident that Nigeria will move. I think 5G will be live here within the next 2 years. I don't see any reason why it should not be. And once it is here, it will have an exponential impact on the opportunities for people in the content industries. I listened to the special technical assistant talk about indigenous content, and he left out the most important side of indigenous content, which is the content created from IP, which is not just creative content, it's also software, it's also innovations that are around R&D. We don't have a country that is investing in any R&D at all. So we really are not doing ourselves any favors in terms of knowledge. And I read something through this pandemic about a gentleman either from Nigeria or Ghana whose name is on one of the strains for the cure of smallpox from the late 40s. And it just tells you that we have been involved in productive things for a very long time. So I strongly feel that, the noise and the buzz and the fake news conspiracy around technology, it happen every time there is new technology. So if you look at the year 2000, if you remember, the year 2000, a million things were supposed to happen, and then the world was going to be over. But somehow we're all still here, and this world will get to 9G and 10G. That's for sure.
Okay, so I'll leave you. I won't be here when they get to 10G anyway. So let's just put that in proper perspective. Yes,
I've given us some new injection that keeps us all here.
Okay, all right. I'll leave you to it, and then you can tell me about it digitally. You can send me messages in my however it is you're going to send it, whether it's smoke signals or whatever. So I wanted to bring on a couple of. I'd like to bring in Salami Abule, who is the MD of RIBI, into the discussion, as well as Najim and the representative of the Honorable Minister, Dr. Adeyemi, so that we can all have gentlemen. If you have a lady, if you have
portion everything out. Do you understand what I'm saying? Where to commit without really the full picture.
Kindly mute if you have background.
But what I'm trying to say, it's the release. So basically, if I was to take an
Najim, can you mute Najim?
Okay, so we've got sorry, apologies for that. So I just to get the conversation back on track. The reason why what intrigues me about what you guys are saying is that it appears that there may be a misconception or some kind of a digital divide. So yes, you guys are all in the cities and you're all in the urban areas, and you work with these people who are technology aware, and so they all understand the reason why there must be. They all understand the reason why there must be why there must be technology, and we're all enjoying that sort of stuff. But what about the lady in the 74-year-old widow in the village who needs telemedicine services, but doesn't really understand that this may actually come from there? or the young man who is a laborer, or even a agriculturist somewhere in Abia State or in Benue State or thereabouts. Because the 5G controversy was real. And a lot of people, not just in Nigeria, but across the world, were fighting against that. How possible is it for us to drive the digital economy without that 5G? I do know that there will be, and this is almost like a technical question, but when you're advancing society through a process of transformation, doesn't it need to be gradual? Could it be that the reason why people are resistant to technology is because they haven't really felt the benefits and the real benefits and positive benefits of it during this maybe 10, 20 years that we have been pushing technology? What are your thoughts on that? Because we city people need to be very careful about how we advance what it is that we think we want the rural guys to have. So what's up? How do we close that gap? Is it a government responsibility, or don't we as private sector have responsibility to enter into that conversation?
Would you like me to answer that question?
I would like anyone to jump in, and
I was waiting.
No, I'll take it. Look, I found in my experience that, adoption is driven by use cases. So it's like you've said, when the benefits are clear, nobody's going to care what G did it. You know what I mean? They're just going to use the products on it. I think, unfortunately, everybody considers themselves, a technologist, and, sometimes comment on things that we have a growing understanding of. You know what I mean? So 5G is not doing anything that 4G, 3G, 2G, and 1G did not do to you already. So really, it's the same. It's the same physical experience your mobile phone is having with your body. Finish. Right. However,
okay,
yeah.
So isn't that, so if the case, why is it that wouldn't you say that is a bit of a failure on the part of the technology providers to be able to create those benefits for the end users so that they're on board? I mean, it's always easy to say government did this, government did that, but have we actually been as a technology ecosystem, have we actually been real advocates and evangelists of what technology can actually do?
I wouldn't worry too much about this. This happens every time there's new technology. People were like this with electricity. You know what I mean? People were like this with the internet. You know what I mean? So with every sort of foundational technological trend, there is always a mania that breeds it at the door. Then eventually everybody starts using it, and then we've forgotten, and then we figure out something else to go crazy about. I mean, right now people are, tying COVID to the Nazis and chloroquine and all kinds of things. It's fine. We are all, the world is very subject to these types of mentalities at the moment. So just with a little patience and some very good use cases, these things will go away. I wouldn't worry too much about that.
Right, and I think we focus on, Obi, you want to say something on that? So that I can, I was going to go into your area, which is about the dollars. All those big dollars you guys talked about. So
please come through soon. So the dollars, we're looking for them. But what I was going to say, just to support Adia, I mean, I think, what's going to basically do it is, Nigerians are global. We're in 200 countries. And when many Nigerians have seen their children, cousins, sisters, brothers using 5G and not dying and operating at a different frequency and speed, they're going to harass their local providers in their own country. In fact, they're going to start insulting them that we're not even up to date. We like to talk ourselves down. So this thing is psychological, as Adia said, and every single time when technology shifts, humanity goes through doomsday scenario, that's the next thing you see. Doomsday. The world is over. It happens every single time. And I think it happens and don't forget, we have a pandemic as well. So with the pandemic, plus new technology, I mean, hey, for conspiracy theorists, this is like the World Cup came early and is here for 5 months or longer. So I think the key thing that everybody should learn is how important authentic sources are, because we're now living in a country where nobody seems to believe anything, and that is dangerous. Forget about 5G. I think that we have a situation where there's a crisis of public communication, and that cannot be right. So we do have to have something sorted out about that.
Well, it's a global problem, actually.
Right.
It's actually a global problem. I heard 5G conspiracies from outside Nigeria long before I heard them.
Yes, it's global, yeah.
Yeah, and just hold the thought, because I'm going to come back there. I want to ask Salami to come on board and just have a discussion, because I know that Ribi works in the finance sector and has been able to take benefits into rural areas by kind of like addressing the issue of financial inclusion. Because I still think very strongly that the more we are able to pivoting off of what the minister's statement had been, build indigenous solutions that have direct benefits for the end user, that is when we get the proliferation and we get the adoption and we get the proliferation of the technologies. Because sometimes you can, I mean, this idea that if you build it, they will come. That's a bit, I mean, it's been proven not to be correct in many ways, except in Nigeria, somehow we built these networks and they went from 500,000 mobile users to what, 130 something million in the space of how many years. So clearly in Nigeria, that formula may work. But Abolore, Salami, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Chinenye.
Welcome to the discussion. At least we have one guy in the room who has hair, and it's not gray. Let's
back.
Economy. How real is this digital economy to you?
That's just basically from the ET.
Yeah, okay, great. Again, thank you. Good to be here. Hi, Adia, and everyone else on the call. Now, I mean, I think I liked your question around the woman in the village, and even though you had centered the question around 5G and 3G, and I'm happy the idea has made it clear to everybody, G is G, either it is 1 or it is 10. So at least we can move away from that one. And I also liked Adia's point around how, or actually I think it was Obi's point around Nigerians will always eventually want to aspire, right? You know, your cousin is already using it and you're not using it, there's trouble. You know, you have to quickly use it. So if you look at those two things, I think the combination of that will be the stronger point, which is that digital economy, digital inclusion. You know, there's such a thing now, digital inclusion. Before you know what's happening now, okay, sorry, the ministry is here, so let me behave myself. You know, there's going to be a new campaign, the digital inclusion campaign. We have not finished financial inclusion. No, I've not robbed everybody with financial inclusion. There's COVID inclusion. You know, we're going to do COVID inclusion and so on and so forth. But my point here is, I think that a lot of the times we care more about the buzz than about the real thing. We care more about, oh, is Mama in the village, can she dial a USSD code to send money to Lagos? I don't understand. That's not what Mama cares about. Mama cares about her food showing up at her desk. So why not deploy a service that allows an agent profile all the people and the things that they need and deliver the service to them in the village? I'm in my head, I'm just thinking in my head right now, and I'm thinking I'm picturing my own village in my head. It's a very small community. It's something that, you know, I don't even need to show up. I can send not even our head of agent network, right? I'm thinking maybe one of our state coordinators, and I can say, hey, profile my entire village. Maybe there are a few thousand people, and you get the job done in, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks. Now, all of the services that those people need, either it is financial service, it is medical service, it's digital service, whatever form of service they need, this guy can be the bridge to that entire community. By the way, this is a community that is my own village, not the entire local government. My local government is called Ogun Waterside. And the reason why it's called Ogun Waterside is because it's a water side, one of the biggest water side in Ogun State. Now, this guy can deliver all of the services that most of the people in that village need, build an entire network, build an entire community, and never have to worry if Mama needs to use a USSD or if she needs to have a mobile phone. But rather, we are more concerned about will Mama dial USSD. I don't understand. How are those 2 points related? What we should care about is the real problem. Is Mama getting the services she needs? How is she going to get it? What is the most effective model that we need to build to deliver that service? Now, she might be connected to the source of that service via a digital pipe. Think of it as building a pipeline. But our own tap might be when you build a distribution system, you build the central, the central storage, then you build the pipes, the large distribution pipes, then you build the small pipes that serve the household. But because of certain constraints, when you're building those kind of infrastructure, you might build hub and spoke where, the final utilization of that doesn't necessarily go straight to the home of the end user, but goes to a central depot where everybody else can go and tap their own. Like a central water storage. Mama can go there, carry a bucket and get the water. Is that not more important than the water entering inside Mama's house if Mama cannot afford it? So I think for us, the whole equation around how real is the digital economy, especially when you go beyond the 10 million or the 20 million people, is a question of, are we practical in how we are designing these things? Majority, 40, 50% of Nigerians will not catch up with the digital economy, especially the adults, not in this age. I'm not talking about the 15, 20, 25 years old. I'm talking about the 35, 45, 55 year old.
You're talking to us, but we understand that, and I forgive you.
No, unfortunately, you cannot come and hide in that section. Let's not bring your gray hair into the equation, right? You're a digital native yourself, or you're a digital convert. So I think for me, we need to bridge the gap between that offline economy and the way we are designing the infrastructure to serve that offline economy, and the online economy and the younger population and how we are designing products to serve that population. We shouldn't leave anybody, out of this old digital economy buzz that we have now started. But I think it's important we begin to deep dive into it.
Okay, let's see if Najim is available to us. Then he can come on, and because he had some critical points to make around. Oh my goodness, Najim, there's a lot of ambient. Najim.
Yeah, I think we need to find it.
Yeah. Let me try and get into it. Let me try and get into. I'm in my kitchen. So can everybody hear me?
Yes, the world can.
Without the ambient noise. I'm sorry I missed so much of this. There's been quite a bit of traffic on our system here. My wife is at work and my daughter is watching The Simpsons, so not much I can do. Yes, I missed most of this, so I don't know where to catch up.
I wanted to hear the issues. I know you made some points around some policy issues around power and telco.
Yeah,
how the two systems work and the impact on GDP.
Yeah, I think our government is structured around oil rents. If you can put up the slides that I put up, and I'll explain for me why we are unable to capitalize as we should be on the ICT revolution. Now, these slides are fairly simple. The first slide that you see here is actually a trend line of oil revenues in dollars by comparison to non-oil revenues in dollars that Nigeria has earned. This is what goes to the government every year as government revenues. And you can see the blue line is basically oil revenues as a percentage of government revenues. And the last time it was less than non-oil revenues was in 1971. So from 1972, the blue line is always a little bit bigger than the red line, and it spikes. And every time you see it spike is a particular point where there's been a surge in the oil prices. And you can see the sustained surge from 2002 all the way up to 2008. Then it drops, and then from 2010 to 2014. But the miraculous thing is when you look at 2015, right, oil prices change, and by 2016, you see that the red line is higher than the blue line. What does that tell you? It tells you that government's making more money from non-oil sources than it is from oil sources, which should indicate that the government should actually start looking more broadly at diversifying the economy. Now,
next slide, right? That should be the second slide.
Yeah, the next slide. What the government should really be doing. Next slide, please. What the government should really be doing, right, is to look at essentially this. You've got oil revenue on a very downward trajectory. You've got GDP going up. And so what's causing that? And the next slide will now show you just one sector in the economy, which is the ICT sector, by comparison to the oil economy. When you look at this slide, you see 2000 As a percentage of GDP, oil and gas is 31%. It was close to 60% of government revenues and 90-something% of foreign exchange revenues, and ICT was 2%. And since that time, ICT has gone from 2 to 12%, which is, what, 4x of what it was at 2000. And you look at oil, and oil has declined from 31% to 9%, and it will go down even more. So the GDP has grown, oil production has grown, but oil as a percentage of GDP has dropped and is now less in terms of the revenue that it brings into government than other sectors of the economy. Agriculture is the largest, but doesn't bring in the largest amount of FX. Now, the largest amount of potential foreign exchange that we could get in our economy is actually ICT, because that's the one where the content is made in Naira and much of the returns or much of the revenues can be in non-Naira, in other currencies. And so the government's problem is it's designed to distribute revenues and to collect revenues from those areas where it is easiest to collect it. And therefore, it's basically structured around not so much enabling or encouraging enterprise, but milking income from producing assets. So that's the thing in a nutshell, and it should really show you in the real world why it's such a drag to try and be an innovative, move fast, break things sector, and not being able to do it because government is basically drawing you back. I always say this to everybody because I actually advised the former Minister of Communications that people, if any of you who know what I look like, they used to mistake me for the former Minister of Communications because I have a beard like him. And I used to ask all the people in his office, how many people, right, needed to read a document on paper and how many could actually just read their document and edit it on their computers. And this is a Ministry of Communications. And in the minister's office, nobody could do it. If you really want to know how familiar with technology people are, nobody could do it. So if you got everybody who's a regulator operating from that particular mindset and is unable to translate themselves into a digital experience, it's going to be very, very hard to get them to see where you're coming from. Now, as I said, I deal with policy a lot, and I'm talking about power. And one of the problems that we have in power is that when they privatize power, they assumed that it was going to follow the telecoms model. And all the power companies that I advised about buying power assets was to tell them that in telecoms, the government did not know what it was giving up. It had no idea what it was doing. And therefore, by sheer accident, it was successful because they felt that they were giving away something that wasn't really worth very much and people had to spend the money. And suddenly these people were making tons of money and they tried to close the door after the horse has bolted. And they've been desperately trying to claw that back rather than trying to unleash the potential in the sector. What am I talking about?
Hold the thought there, just a second. Just hold the thought, and let's go into the discussion. We kind of like gone through the processes of thinking through all the elements around what the challenges are, and I think many of us can, literally anyone on the streets here you call can tell you all the things the government is doing wrong or doing right. But now we need to now dive straight into the policies and try to figure out, okay, so what is the what next? Okay. What really is the what next? And before you do that, I would like to invite Dr. B to make a few comments if he desires to around what he's heard so far, and then we talk specifically around the drivers, because now we now know what the challenges are. We understand some from the broad level what the issues we need to deal with are. The question is, how do we then address it? And I've heard a few things that I'd like the panel to kind of zero in on and give us some answers as we go forward. Is Dr. Adelui available?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so I was just looking at your face to see that it's still the same nice face that we saw earlier, because there are lots of punches coming through. But I think you guys are generally used to that. Nigerians are hungry for
because he uses it to encourage himself and to fine tune.
All I can tell you is that I'm glad he's not the one that was receiving those punches. It's only you. You, I can deal with him is a different story. So
I'm sure to let him know. So no problem. Let me just address some of the issues that were raised. I just highlighted some of them. So Adia, we understand your concerns. I understand what you have said about people being arrested. Well, if you remember some weeks ago, no, not some weeks, I mean, actually some months ago, the minister released a statement requesting that security agencies, police, EFCC, and so on, should not mistake anyone with a computer as being someone that, in quote and unquote, a Yahoo boy. So even though we're in government, we're interfacing with them, trying to make them understand that if we're trying to build a digital economy, the same government cannot have its institutions trying to pull down the innovative people that want to, build the economy. Obviously, there are some people that are fraudsters, but you cannot use that as a reason for, attacking and arresting people arbitrarily. So that point is noted. We're still interfacing with them. Please, we're happy to get suggestions, comments from you. The issue of taxation and all that, even though sometimes it's government agencies that come up with these policies, it doesn't mean that we're totally in support of it. So we're interfacing with them and telling them, look, we cannot be trying to build the economy and then things are being done to discourage people from going digital. So we are working on that. Thank you very much. Then Obi had talked about the issue of collaboration. So when we come here and say that a national digital economy policy and strategy or a broadband plan or any of those things have been launched, it has not just been by the government, it has not just been by the ministry. In fact, we have all these processes as part of our rulemaking process. We have engaged the stakeholders and we've had experts that worked with us. You talked about the National Digital Economy Council. It's actually in the policy. So we have a council that's going to be inaugurated in a couple of days, hopefully next week or the week after that. And it includes people from the academia, from innovation hubs, computer operators, tech companies, and so on. So we're trying to ensure that is a PPP. Government is not all-knowing. And yes, we know that citizens can tend to distrust government, but when you see results being produced by a person at the helm of affairs, it helps them to trust him. And honestly, my boss, the Honorable Minister, has been working round the clock to ensure that the sector is developed, and would like to get support from everybody. Chineye had said something, so it was, even the moderator was punching us as well, even though he's our friend. He said the Nigerians, maybe he said, or if I got your quote well, didn't listen to the minister, but they listened to COVID concerning the right of way and so on. But actually, in February, just before the launch of the broadband plan, I joined the minister at that meeting. He went to see the governors. He first saw the chairman of the Governors Forum and then had a meeting with all the governors. And he talked to them about the right of way issue. So when you read now that states are reducing the right of way to 1 naira to 0 naira, it didn't just happen. This has been a lingering problem for over 10 years. Every time we have the policy that says it should be 145, and nobody does it. But now things are changing because they are seeing that he's backing his words with action, and they are seeing that he's ready to get this thing done. He's ready to develop the digital economy. So we're working together, and he's committed to ensuring that the digital economy of Nigeria grows, just like Adia said, the size of digital economy in Africa. We want to have a large slice of it. We're working with Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment on AFICTA. We want to see how Nigerians can not just get funds and get revenue from Nigeria. We want to take advantage of the African market. So we're all in the same boat, and our success is your success. So please support us and send in advice, send in comments. Obi had talked about something about the media. Actually, I want to engage you after this to get some info, because we're trying to see what we can do to promote that particular subsector. we realized that there's a lot of activity that's going on there. We're even hearing they're being uploaded on social media, being uploaded by foreign media, and it's only necessary and it's only right for us to develop them here as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Femi. Please stay with us, because now we're in the conversation. I'm standing in front of you, so any blow to come to me before they get to. So kudos to the minister, of course, for his efforts regarding the rights of way. I think he was clearly a key driver. It's always important in a similar way, you know. And I don't say this, I don't mean to be facetious in saying this, but you can imagine what the reaction of the police force would be if they saw the minister in a backpack, and how that then validates the dress code and the culture of the developer community. I'm not asking him to do so, but I'm just saying that the signaling is very important. So as those went right of way, certainly there must be some shift on those who are like in the front lines, that would allow the radical departure from that attitude towards developers. Have a country with young people, and then you find their way of dressing offensive, and they become punitive to them in that society. And I think that's really something that, as facetious as it may sound or insignificant, culture is absolutely critical. So let's talk a bit about the policy issues, because some of these things come up. I wanted to call out the fact that last year the record at about $640 million came into Nigeria and into the tech economy. And of that 640 million, about 90% of it ended up in Lagos. So is it possible to build a digital economy without kind of Lagos? What makes it possible? It just can't be just infrastructure. And that is what concerns the broad generality of Nigerians. As great as it is for Lagos, it needs to be just as big for the rest of the country, because this is where there are 200 million people in Nigeria, 21 million in Lagos states. So what happens to the 180? And that's where we now need to, in terms of policy. And I would like to hear from the panelists what they think are the critical things that must be done from a policy perspective that can unlock and accelerate access to this type of growth and accelerated growth. So anyone can lead.
Can I go?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Yeah, I think Najim, can you,
go ahead.
Yeah, I think, you know, in terms of the things that can be done intentionally and immediate actions. Femi from the minister's rep, thank you for what you said. The real thing I really wanted you to strike on immediately was the digital piracy that is going on in Nigeria, which is enormous, which is something that the ministry can back the Nigerian Copyright Commission. That's a cross-sector collaboration, and would literally wipe that out with one action. That is something that is a tangible that we can walk away with today, if I get your commitment from that.
What would that action be, Obi? Be specific. I mean, when we say wipe it away in one day, how does that happen? Magic wand?
It's actually quite simple. Sorry, Obi, can I jump in here? It's actually quite simple. They have the Copyright Act, they have the Cybercrimes Act, and they can just get the ISP, the provider, to just basically shut them down. It's not difficult. The procedures are simple. So
and also the industry can first fashion them a list of ISPs, almost a comprehensive list to shut down as a kickoff, to shut them out of Nigeria as a kickoff, so that we can securitize and better monetize the content that we are creating on a daily basis. Another thing that we would love to see is to see how the sector can work closer in tighter collaboration with the tech economy in terms of, I know that everybody was involved in the policy document, but I'm talking about in the execution of the policy. So I think that is really, really important, especially to do with venture, technology, and education, because those three things, that's the entrepreneur ecosystem, the educational ecosystem to bring education online really for real, and then to really collaborate between that. I mean, education is an enormous sector by itself. The startup ecosystem is really just starting up, but I would love to have a situation where we were also tangible. So the techpreneurs who do technology and believe they invented innovation, I believe that actually they should be engaging very closely with And Nigeria actually should be engaging with a place like Nnewi, where you have 1,000 industries and literally zero government support. What happens?
I think Ajia has something here she wants to say.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. So please jump in. Don't wait for these gentlemen.
Don't wait for me, because I'll talk for you.
So the points are very valid, right? But I think that we need to, we flog people a lot in this country, right? But I think when you sit down and take a look at this talent that has found its way towards something more nefarious, it can be repurposed. Okay. So and at once, Obi was talking about the problem, but also presented what to me looks like the solution. These same people that are distributing content illegally, or creating the technology, or even using content distributed over these very cheap means, because that's why piracy thrives, right? How can we repurpose that for education? We have information that we need to get out and disseminate for education, but right now is really solely focused on entertainment, but it's needed for education. So for me, I'm very keen, in finding ways, similar to what's been done abroad. The governments of the US, the UK, and so on and so forth, when they find especially talented hackers, they hire them into the security agencies.
Yes,
they don't really arrest them and toss them in jail, because that's actually talent that has developed itself in spite of the lack of resources. So for me, I feel like that talent can be repurposed. So let's not,
Yeah, I like the idea of conversion, I have to say. I think conversion of those sort of people is really important. But I wasn't even really talking about the local phishing sites. I'm talking about the international ones.
Okay.
There are literally loads of torrent sites from, all over the world, all over Nigeria. And we need to, because what this stops is that foreign investment will not come into those spaces because they can't secure their assets, right? And if you can't secure foreign assets, it means you can't also secure Nigerian assets, which comes back to the rights protection. Now, there's digital monitoring available today that enables us to see what is being done on every single device. We can track 95 devices in real time. So it's time for Nigeria to begin to do that and to enable this environment and to back rights protection. I can see Adia is very happy about rights protection. What are you saying?
Piracy, as unfortunate as it is addressing an availability problem.
Yes.
If content was available on platforms like, Iroko or anything you want to develop, with Dragon Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And we had payment systems that would process not only Naira, but other currencies. You just give them the website and they come and they pay. At the end of the day, look at what Netflix has done, right? The most popular pirated content, unfortunately suffers from an access issue. So if you can get this content in a place that's easy and at a cost that makes some sense, you at least address piracy to some extent. You may not eliminate it wholly, right? But then you now get a different level of the problem and then you create a solution for that. But I think that, as we're putting energy towards stopping it, I think that's good. And I think we can do that at the ISPs and cut off that head of the snake. But it's one head of the snake and the problem is going to surface somewhere else.
Adi, I just want to jump straight in there with you, because the other part of it, as you know, and we tried to do this 8 years ago, I believe, is about building our own domestic platforms, right? We have billions of streams and billions of views going on all sorts of platforms. None of them are owned by Nigerians. I think the Nigerian government can intentionally partner with various sectors in the creative industries and the technology community to back existing platforms to help them scale, and also to help new platforms come. We really have a situation, if you look at India and China, they protected themselves to enable, whether it was Baidu, whether it's Tencent, whether it's Alibaba, to get to scale. So I think Nigeria has to be intentional about some of these things, because as you said, if not, we're all going to be working for non-Nigerians all the time. Yep. And I think we can build wealth, we can build scale, but it does need tight collaboration of aligned interests between enlightened government policies and the private sector and the academia. That's really, I'm really interested in that networked collaboration approach to develop an ecosystem, because the truth of the matter is nobody producing content today in Nigeria is getting their fair return. Nobody making anything is getting their fair return. And what's the issue? The issue is retail, logistics, distribution, whether it's physical.
Just a second. Just 1 second, because Salami had a point he wanted to bring forward around that. He was talking about the pipes and the way that government seems to be conceptualizing the ecosystem and the way it will grow. and do what was practical as opposed to what was, what was nice, what looked really good on paper, and how, kind of like you need to come up with some innovative ways that are more pragmatic in terms of building out. Are you available to discuss that, Salami? Or if you can just unmute yourself and perhaps expatiate on that in the context that Obi and Adia have spoken about, the really policy elements that need to change, the direct actions that can be taken to quickly activate and accelerate the process of rebooting or resetting the digital economy. What would that amount to from your perspective?
So, I mean, I think for me, it's just the fact that we need to take more pragmatic approach. We need to, and I see that happening a bit in financial services. So, for example, the central bank and all of the apparatus of the banking industry have said, hey, we see that it's important to build out an agent network, right? So they say, how do we get to 500,000 agents within a particular time frame? And I think they have now gotten to about 70% of that target, which is 350,000 agents. And thank God for the agent banking network. Corona will have been a completely different story, right? Because that became the bank of today.
Right. So now here's the question. You're saying that I don't know if the 100 and something people across the world who are watching this, or the 400 people registered for this event, really understand that or even agree with you. Where is the data to prove that is actually impacting COVID? How do we know that as a fact so that we can pivot the policy around that? Or do we just take your word for it?
No, don't take my word for it. As a matter of fact, the data is available publicly for the most part. The Nigerian Interbank Settlement System, the shared agent network for SIGA SANEF, the central bank, the banks, the agent network, they all put out a lot of data around what they are doing and how they are using the bridge between offline to online to solve this problem. And again, for me, it's not so much.
So what does that actually show? Does it show that, for instance, transactions moved aggressively online and that changed by 4x or 2x, as the case may be, and there was fulfillment and general happiness? I mean, is that what the data shows?
Yeah, I mean, I know a digital bank, for example, that had I think about 200% growth in their customer base, literally just doing the COVID lockdown, because people could not access banks and they needed to go to the next available channels, right? And I see Adia is having a nice smile on her face. I'm sure she probably has some exciting stories to tell us about how the period has been for the financial service industry. But I want to spend less time on, or I want to not have to narrow everything down to financial services, right? If you think about it from several other sectors like retail, FMCG retail, for example, I bet to say Jumia might have been a more successful company if it was a B2B e-commerce company as opposed to a B2C e-commerce company. And the reason for that is that the infrastructure to support a B2C e-commerce company is quite expensive to build, right? So imagine that the government right now is building infrastructure that makes it extremely easy for you to get product to the last mile cheaper. I'm not making it more expensive, right? Of course, we've talked about licensing and all sort of things. My point here is that digital economy does not necessarily have to mean that everything has to be on the phone or on the computer. It has to be designed in such a way that we understand the things that need to be digitized and should be digitized now, in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, in the next 20 years, and the things that should continue the way they are today, but just gradually enhanced by digital. We shouldn't bother about.
So just to get you right, because the key point that you're making, you're saying that the digital transformation will not happen across all sectors evenly, and therefore we need to have specific plans for each sector, and where necessary, digitize what we can digitize now, and work on the analog that takes you the rest of the way. Is that kind of like what you're getting to?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that a digital economy is first an economy. A digital infrastructure is first an infrastructure. A digital value chain is first a value chain. We haven't fixed the fundamental, areas, and we just want to now layer digital on top of it without thinking about the core, the fundamental things that need to be solved first. So I'm saying that we need to think about digital economy. I'm not necessarily a fan of analog in this digital age. What I'm saying is that the way we are designing the things that we want to design, we shouldn't design them thinking it always has to be on the internet or it always has to be on our mobile phone. There are still some significant role that
I think he lost his connection.
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was me. But
Yeah, I thought it was me, so I switched off my video because it's a bit dicey when it comes to that.
Actually.
That's all right.
I got you lost.
Okay, as a digital migrant, let me just try and answer that aspect from a policy perspective. And I want to use the example of power, and I used it yesterday, but I'll use the example of power so that Femi can get the benefit of it. A study was done in Senegal about 4 years ago, which I used, which was used to help us develop the part of the rural electrification policy in Nigeria. What it was we used data on cell phone usage and cell phone tower usage, both voice and data, in certain parts of the country. And we did a longitudinal study over about 6 months to work out the clusters of usage of the towers, so that we now figured out how many cell phones were being used in a particular area at a particular time. And we could actually track the power usage in those communities in line with the cell phone usage. Because the first presumption is that if you have a cell phone, you've got to have access to electricity, right? Now, what we also found out from that was that it was a rough measure at best, because quite often people who didn't have electricity would charge their phones at a 5 naira, 10 naira charging spot in town, where the local mesuya or the person who's selling soft drinks does that as a service with a bank of what are those extenders, those socket extenders.
Yeah.
So what we are now able to see was that electrical appliances and electrical devices were being used in places without electricity. And this now tells you, why is this important? Because it tells you where to expand your electricity network. It also tells you where there's economic activity, because it's likely that there is electricity use where there's economic activity. So if you're going to now expand your network, or you're going to expand your physical infrastructure, right? The digital infrastructure, or the digital footprint that these people are making, no matter how light, is an indication of where to put that infrastructure. And I just wanted to put that out as a response to what Salami was saying.
Okay, so and just to clarify, thank you for that, and I think that kind of speaks to one of the points that Obi had made very early, which was captured in the concept of digital council, where we tend to see that one can say that despite all the efforts, it doesn't appear that all the agencies of government, the MDAs, are aligned in terms of the digital economy and what needs to be done about it. To the extent that for instance, we have the education sector where the lecturer are saying they're back to university because they're not opening schools because they don't have digital infrastructure. And the ministry is saying, well, everybody should go online. And you have some states pivoting, already doing a lot of work around online learning. And of course, you have the startup ecosystem responding by producing products. So aligning power, education, health, the creative economy, and the fiscal authorities into what is required to power the digital economy seems to be a critical issue. I don't know if that's a fair comment. And would we expect this to be part of the Digital Economy Council? How does this resolve so that you have a situation where everyone is heading towards the same goal, albeit at different paces, but we're building the right kind of infrastructure into the right places, whether it's power or it's a fiber, and we have the policies that enable those kind of things to happen. I know Nigeria was big on cluster development, but you can't take 200 people and 200 million people and put them into a cluster or a series of clusters. So what then happens? I mean, how does your policy currently, or what do we currently think about the policy in terms of how it's addressing these things in terms of lifting everyone at the same time, driving towards the same objective?
Okay. Was that to me?
No, it's actually to Femi.
Oh, okay.
Because he as a custodian of the roadmap. Would you say that all the ministries and NDAs are aligned effectively towards the digital economy and rowing at the same time towards the same direction?
Thank you, Chine. I would say that they are aligned, and we're trying to get them more aligned. So obviously, there are different institutions that are growing at different paces, but the whole idea is to make sure that every one of them gets to know what is being done, and as much as possible, we'll try to educate them to see how they can key into what we're doing, especially the key institutions. So we don't expect that the different sectors to grow at the same pace. That would be difficult, but we just want to make sure that everyone is making progress towards supporting the implementation of the policy and strategy. So, I mean, in addition to the policy that we have.
I think. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I don't think the panel. I think the panel is saying the opposite of what you're saying. So the impression seems to be, for instance, that you can't say the police is aligned if they're arresting developers. We can't say that the fiscal authorities are aligned if they're implementing multiple taxes on people who are trying to get things done. And we can't say that the money flow is money is being directed into the economy and boosting startups if we're saying the bulk of the funds that are funding the startup ecosystem is coming from offshore. So clearly there's something that is not working, and we would like to understand. We're trying to figure out, working with government, what is the best way to get this alignment and to get the momentum for rebooting the digital economy. But what you're saying is maybe intention, but in reality, it doesn't seem to be the case.
Okay, maybe I should use the example of what happened with the governors. So initially, it was known that the right-of-way charges should be a maximum of 145 naira per linear meter. It had been there, the policies had been there. Yes, in terms of alignments, most governors said they supported it and they aligned. But the reality was that when operators went to install the cables, they found that they're paying much more than 145, right? So we tried to engage them some more. And eventually it has led to what we now have in a number of the states, and we're hoping more states follow suit. So the same way for the different sectors, for the things like the one with the police, the one with FIRS, we get out the policy, we'll make sure that they know about it, then we'll start some engagement with the top hierarchy, and then we'll try to get them to see reason with us and to see how modifying their policies, right, will help to develop the digital economy and eventually develop their own sector. So yes, okay, I get what you mean. So ideally we want everybody to align. So, but right now the reality is not that we're having the full alignment like we want. Even though in some cases there's a verbal alignment, but we'll keep engaging to see how they can fully align. So that's what I meant when I said that there's some level of alignment. I don't know if I addressed your question.
Yes, in a way. I mean, the panelists. There's a couple of questions coming through on the Q&A, and one of those questions has to do with this. Goes back to the question of education. The continuous absence of the quality of education of quality education across the country is a major hindrance to the digital economy emerging, and that basically everything that we are talking about today. This question came from Maureen EKG. Is that it appears that the country as a whole is not wanting to adopt the digital economy. And so we need to go, I suppose what she's asking, she said, my question is, what's the reasonable roadmap for progress in this area? How are we going to ensure that we get the adoption across board so that the investments that are being made and the efforts that are being made are consistently delivering benefits and accepted by all? What would be in which that happens? Is it through education, for instance?
Okay, I noticed that Adia had her hand up. So ladies first.
Thank you.
Wants to contribute.
Thank you, Femi. Hopefully I help your matter or not. You tell me. But I think if government adopted technology, all this would go away. If everything in the government was done using a digital means, all this would go away. If collecting any financial benefit, filling every form, paying any, if everything was done with tech, it will become the norm. So if government becomes the biggest user of technology, I think that addresses, because you learn by doing, like I mentioned before, right? There's no time, nobody has time for product manuals anymore. So at least that would be my perspective, Femi, just to put you on.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Another question is, yeah, you agree with that? That was a simple, an easy way to get out of it.
To add to
Okay.
what Adia was saying, because as I said, I was working on the strategy with the last minister on this issue. To add to what Adia is saying, I know from being inside that ministry and to some extent with NCC that this wholesale adoption of digital governance is not an easy sell in the ministry. And I think, Femi, you know it. You come from Korea where everything is done digitally.
So Najim, in terms of policy, what then needs to be done? Because I think let's get to solutions so we don't spend a lot of time on the problems. What would be your one single thing that needs to be done in order to achieve that adoption and get that acceleration?
For me, the ministry can champion regulatory sandboxes, which is where digital technology is disrupting a particular sector like education or power, so that they can actually go in and help the regulator there understand that this may be a new way of doing things. You cannot apply the old rules to it. Let it play itself out, and we will monitor and evaluate it as it's going along. It's not an easy sell, and it seems like that's what the ministry is trying to do in a nice way. I think at this point, it's got to the point where you need to say, it's going to happen, so why don't you let us try it with this, or in this particular setting, before we can now see whether we can roll it out. Because the big institutional problem you have is, I'm not a great fan of partnering with government, because the moment you do that, you bring in one bureaucracy and you have so many vulnerabilities to corruption that you're not going to be able to get it off the ground. I'm sure Femi spends a lot of his time arguing with other government agencies as to why this efficiency is good for the government and good for the country, but the other bureaucrats don't necessarily agree with him. So I think the regulatory sandboxes is a way to go, because it basically isolates and quarantines this imaginative or new system, and it allows it to thrive in a controlled environment.
Okay, so I'm going to go to each of the panelists and ask basically the same question. You know, if there's one big rock that needs to be moved, what would that be? How would you go about it? So you identify the issue and you tell us what it is that needs to change in order for this to happen. I like the idea of regulatory sandboxes, plain space, everyone go in there, things out, goes out into public, and it will certainly help to accelerate things. Adia, start with you.
One rock. That's actually a big that's a big question. Okay, maybe I'll fall back on something I said before. It's in the tech industry. It's really one day, one trouble. You know, from a whole bunch of MDAs. Maybe the ministry could just protect us a little bit and just let anybody that wants to apply any tax or fine should come and see you first and explain it. You know, before you help them levy it, if you feel if the ministry feels it is valid. Perhaps we go with that.
So I'm going to ask you a little bit, I'm going to push a little bit on this one point. So would you consider, for instance, that government is government actually, supposing the public sector and the private sector were able to sit and literally simulate the impact of such regulation in kind of like this kind of regulatory sandboxes? So we would say, well, government has a goal to increase taxation in this respect because we have to do X and Y. How is it going to impact the key drivers of the digital economy? And you can actually model that and say, well, if we do this over the next 2 to 3 years, here's what's going to happen in terms of GDP. And here's what would happen to the companies. Because sometimes it appears that the private sector feels government doesn't really understand what the impact of their policies and regulations would have. And then you would have on them and their profitability. Would you consider, again, some kind of a sandbox where there is some kind of simulation of government policy and maybe government being a bit more open in terms of letting the private sector know which direction they're going in? Or is that a dream? Did you get the question, Adia?
Oh, it was to me. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Would that work for you? Do you think that would work for the private sector, where you can actually work with governments around its own regulation?
I think, you know, some of the impact is measurable and some measure stress, the opportunity cost of applying stress to the individuals in an industry? So that kid that gets arrested with his laptop loses a day of work. You can maybe measure that tangibly, but then how do you measure when the guy decides, you know what, I'm not going to try to solve any problems locally. I'm just going to spend whatever money I have on the internet to get me to Canada. How do you measure the impact of that loss on people? Right. So I think there's a part of it that's measurable, but I think a lot of it will not be, but, happy to take any step in that direction.
Fantastic. So, over to which is the big role you want us to do from this equation? Here's blocking our pathway to new economy that we want to enter into.
Who's that for? Was that for me?
Well, I spoke to Salami, but he's still muted, so you can go ahead. I'm sure he'll come back into this. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, is it the same basic general question in terms of what is the one thing?
Yeah, you listed 5, but I would like to know which one in particular, and what's the policy initiative that needs to be in place to be able to transform? I think you can go back to what you said before, which was IP. I think you were very big on the IP enforcement. Would that be the one?
Well, yes, IP protection is critical to protect all the things that are being created, and consumer education and market education about IP. It's the same thing I was going to say about the 5G issue. It's really about consumer education. When the industry is going to launch 5G, it will educate the people about it. I think they're not ready to launch. My view from the content and creative industries is that I would love to see a situation where the digital economy puts the content and the cultural and creative industries at the forefront of everything they're doing. I think right now we're at the bottom tip, whereas really we are the storytellers. So no matter what you do, if you don't tell the story, nobody's ever going to really engage it. I think we have the power sits with the cultural and creative industries to tell a better story about Nigeria. We already are doing that. I think the best story about Nigeria, the best lens from which to view Nigeria is from our creative industries. And if we can enhance that and further put the rails behind it to monetize it, and this industry, this sector and this ministry can, because there are device companies using billions of our things, not putting any contribution to any of what we produce. There are platforms all over Nigeria doing the same thing with no contribution. So I think that there's an opportunity for a dedicated levy or fund from the telco industries. I know idea things that they pay a lot, but I'm not really looking at this as a big line item, but I think it's very, very important because monetization is at a micro level at this point in time. And we do have something where we need to be able to put something behind Nigerians. For me, the cultural and creative industries are the human expressions of Nigerians. And at the end of the day, that's the single most important conversation in the room, because all the rails, the infrastructure, all of these things will be used by human beings, and where we can empower them to enable them to make more money and to create more, then we should do that, and we should be intentional about doing it. The Chinese have done it, the Brazilians have done it, the Indians have done it, everybody does it. Nigeria already leads the world in terms of our culture and our content coming out without our government. So it would be great if our technology and our economy, in terms of the digital economy, comes behind and partners with this sector to explode it so that it can reach the KPMG numbers and exceed them. And we can actually see the money in real terms, not just in a document.
Thank you. So we're rounding up, about to round up. So I'll take a few comments from the floor. The questions are being answered in the Q&A, which is great. There is a question from Sademola Aladekomo. Could you come on mute and present or put forward your question in a few minutes? Could you unmute Mr. Aladekomo? I think he's one of the people with their hands up. Okay.
Please, can you unmute Mr. Ademola Aladekomo, please?
He's been unmuted. He's been allowed to unmute himself.
Okay. Is Salami back with us?
Yeah. Hi, Chine. Apologies.
Okay.
I'm here.
Yeah.
My connection,
Yeah,
so I'm going to stay on audio.
No problem.
I mean,
so,
I
so
think,
just give us. Go ahead.
I think for me, there are quite a number of things that come to mind. I know you say you want one big rock, so I'm going to use one stone to kill two birds, right? Since the stone is the rock, and I'm going to say that it's more around number one, what Adia has said around regulation. We need to streamline all of these plenty regulation, right? So you want to run a digital business, you have to sort of engage with almost 50, well, let me say 10 different regulators and things around technology, things around different type of licensing, different type of tax. Can we streamline it? Can we say if you're in the technology sector, you work with the digital economy ecosystem and all of your licensing, the tax, all of this, there's a desk dedicated for that purpose, and there's no other agency you need to engage. Now they're introducing 600 naira for every agent point in Nigeria at the local government level. Let's not even talk about that local government taxation and, well, in quotes, you can almost say it is armed robbery that is going on right now. So, but that streamlining, I think, is very important. And then the second part is that we need to create an ecosystem that improves local capital. Someone else cannot be paying the piper and we want to listen to our tune. It doesn't work that way. Whoever pays the piper dictates the tune. So if Nigeria doesn't create the environment that improves significant investment in digital economy right now, we're going to be, I mean, it's going to take us maybe another 20 years. The way it took us about 20 years to actually own our own creative industry, where the local talents were funded by the likes of Obi and people that were able to groom local talent. Before now, it was Busta Rhymes and co that we used to listen to. Now it's Duduke that we're listening to. Thank God. So if we don't do that now, then we'll have to repeat that maybe in 2040. You say you'll not be here in 2070, but maybe 2070 will be the year where we have to take back the Nigerian economy. So I think those are my two big points: regulation and capital.
And capital. Thank you very much. Do we have Sir Aladekomo available? Otherwise, we'll take a quick comment from Ugo Amadi. Okay, we seem to have a problem with the muting and unmuting. So we can try. The last person would be Mr. Peter Oyene.
Same issue.
Same issue. Okay, so the gentlemen are not unmuting themselves. So
hello.
Yes.
Okay, we can hear you now.
Yes. Can you give us a quick comment, please? We can hear you. Please go ahead with a quick comment.
Okay,
quick question.
Thank you very much. I want to. Okay, just a comment. I want to.
Please dispense with protocols and don't worry about commending whoever. Maybe you can just ask your question, or you can post your question in the chat room and we can read it out for you. Does that work? If your network is not good. Okay, his connectivity is not good. Yes, could you post your question, please?
Okay. Hello. Okay.
We can hear you. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. I said at the point I left, I don't know whether the minister came when I left or whether we are still expecting the minister.
Why does that? Is that your question? The question is.
Yeah, that's the question. Then the comment will come.
Okay, so no, there's no comment after that. You asked a question, so the minister doesn't need to be. You asked a question around the minister. I don't think we want to.
Okay, let me just
comment is intended for his.
Okay, can I go ahead, please? With comment.
Can you post the question, please? Because it seems like we're not hearing you so well.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Do we have Mr. Aladekomo available now, or Mr. Amadi?
Okay. Sorry, depending when they come on, can we ask questions too? We panelists, because I'd love to know what the I know there's a lot of documents around the ministry and the digital economy framework. Is there any specific roadmap, one page perhaps, to say, hey, this is how we're going to change the story of Nigeria from a technology standpoint? And we need to be very pragmatic. A lot of the startup stories that we hear or the technology stories that we hear in other markets is driven by private sector. It's driven by small companies going from $1 million, point of view, or even $10,000 point of view to $100 billion point of view. It's just such a roadmap, and I know this probably already exists. So this is just me putting the technical assistant to the minister on the spot and saying, if you could talk very briefly about that, I think it will be a good thing to say.
Okay,
like
I can answer that question.
I still pay withholding tax in tens of millions, and I'm not using it for anything because I'm not declaring profit. I'm building infrastructure, right? All that money should be returning back to me in this Corona season. Okay,
so let me quickly say that the documents exist and the one pagers exist. If you pick up any of the roadmaps, you will be able to get that. There is a summary page that lists the direction, even gives you what needs to be done over a period of time. I think that will probably answer your question. What it may not have done is that it may not have been as socialized as it needed to be. I think we are well a little bit past our time, and I just want to close by summarizing those 5 points again. So I think these things are absolutely critical for us to look at. The first thing, in terms of policy, these are the things that will enable us to reboot. The first is a discussion around IP enforcement and the opportunities that it unlocks for monetizing digital content, particularly in the creative economy, and creates a safe environment for the development of distribution platforms that are digital. So our content that is local is sold from here, the values are created here. The second one is around the local capital needs, which needs enablement, so that our IP that is created within Nigeria doesn't necessarily leave and be owned, be foreign owned, as seems to be the case. We've also spoken about regulatory sandboxes for governments in terms of creating environments that are relatively safe environments where technology can actually be tested out, working hand in hand with government, and we understand what is working without penalizing startups or penalizing innovation in terms of investing in innovation, getting to the end game, and then they tell you this is no longer possible, or policy comes in place that kind of like counters that. We've also talked about streamlining regulations across the sectors, understanding the key drivers, the key sectors that drive the digital economy, and harmonizing regulations across all of them and streamlining them so that people don't have to do things over and over again and bear the onerous burden of taxes and other such things. We've also spoken to a need for a large, a comprehensive digital economy council that is made up of the public and the private sector, where ideas and concepts and policies and regulations can all be addressed and harmonized so that one policy doesn't work against the other. Whether it's access to finance, access to capital, access to facility, laying of infrastructure, so that the clusters and the areas that are in dire need of the infrastructure for digital economy are actually benefiting at the same time. And we've spoken about creating a culture that supports the startup ecosystem in an effective way so that we don't alienate the people for whom we're actually trying to build this digital economy. And we give them an effective role and status within this new world that we're envisioning. At this point, we're over time, and I thank you very much for the robust discussion, all the panelists. I thank the Honorable Minister for his presence, and I'll hand back the controls to Franklin so that we can close out the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chinenye. Thank you very much, honorable panelists, honorable minister, represented by Dr. Femi Adeluyi. Thank you very much for such a wonderful outing, a very exciting engagement. And I wish we had more time, but that's all we can take for today. So for our participants, there's some questions, feedback question on the screen. Can you please help us fill that while we round up? On behalf of my team members in Reignite, I really wish to thank everybody for coming out today. Questions are still coming on, but due to time, we might not be able to take all that. So while we're taking this webinar survey, we'll quickly let the audience know the people behind this webinar, essentially Reignite Public Affairs and what we do in Reignite. Can we have our short clip, please? Can we have the clip, please? Hello? Okay, since the back-end people are not ready to roll the clip, we'll just say very big thank you for coming. Honorable Minister, we would like to, if I may ask, we would like to have some summary of the discussion you had with us, maybe the speech, so that we can, as part of our feedback to participants, we can send it back to them.
No problem.
I know you didn't present one here, maybe due to time, but we would like to have a formal speech from the Minister's office. If you please to, yeah. Is that okay, Dr.
Well,
Femi?
that's perfect, thank you.
Okay. Chineye, back to you. We've rounded up for today. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Dr. Alade Komo, I appreciate you showing up here. We're hoping to benefit from your knowledge in this digital economy discussion. Thank you very much. Chineye.
Chineye, muted.
Okay, thank you very much. As I was saying that we had technical issues, including people not unmuting like myself. So my apologies to everyone for the technical hitches that we had. I do believe that we had a robust discussion and clearly not enough time to deal with all the issues that are on the table. We've listed out 6 or 7 core issues, including human capital development as core to rebooting the digital economy that we're looking for. We know that this is something that is desirable for Nigeria. And I think the slide from Najee made it very clear that if ICT is growing, it is an upward trajectory, while the GDP figures seem to be coming down, then definitely what we need to do is to overinvest in the area where we can actually see growth. And that overinvestment means that at a minimum, we should be doing more than what the foreign direct investment is doing in our own tech sectors to grow those spaces so that we can see there is no reason why Nigeria shouldn't be talking about a $5 or $10 billion fund that goes into building the elements of the tech economy. And that way boost the digital economy itself with parallel impact on medicine, on healthcare, on education, on productivity, on every single component of what makes a 21st century well-being desirable for all. The prosperity is available, but the portal that we must pass through is one that takes us through from analog into digital. And that must begin with government. Government itself, by a simple request by government, for example, that says every single tender that comes in must be on a spreadsheet. The costings must be on a spreadsheet, automatically creates an accelerator in the environment. So people must learn how to use spreadsheets and how to create those things. So the power of government is really what we all come to. They're a big tree. A tree doesn't make a forest, but there's a really large tree that's inside this our forest, and we could do with as much support as is possible. So we thank the Honorable Minister once again for his attendance through his representative, Dr. Femi Adeluyi, and we hope that the dialogue continues. Thank you very much, Reignite, for the opportunity given to us on behalf of all panelists.
Okay, Tina, I think they're ready with the video now.
Okay, thank you very much, and I suppose we'll see you on the other side of the video. Go ahead.
Is there an audio to this?
Please, can they unmute the audio? I think it's muted from their system.
Multilateral institutions. We offer a unique capability for organizations operating at a critical intersection between business and government in Africa. The firm provides an array of services that help to improve governance and enhance relationship between the business community and the different arms and levels of government and its agencies. This it does through the provision of services that combine effective government and legislative relations, policy research and analysis, advocacy and issues management, political communication, regulatory affairs, capacity building, and sector-specific expertise, which can be critical success factors for organizations in a highly competitive and regulatory business environment. Reignite Public Affairs possesses an uncommon combination of senior-level industry experts with commercial and project management experience, coupled with a thorough understanding of government's bureaucratic and political processes, as well as policy and regulatory frameworks. Our distinct approach to public affairs and government relations extends beyond relationship management. As Nigeria's first full-service public affairs consulting firm, Reignite Public Affairs is positioned at the communication intersect with the public sector, the government, private sector, organizations, people, citizens to enhance better relationships. It is a subsidiary of the CMC Connect Group, a foremost strategic communications company with an impressive 27 years track record in the industry, having worked with virtually all the top brands in the country. Reignite Public Affairs is situated in the Federal Capital Territory of Nigeria, Abuja, and Lagos, the commercial hub of Nigeria.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody. Chineye, thank you for piloting this session. I guess we've come to the end of today. And as a follow-up, we'll send the feedback, highlights of this session to all the attendees. We'll also get back with the minister's speech as soon as this session is over. Thank you very much. We'll call it a day here. Bye-bye.
Thank you for having us. Thank you, everyone.